See, right here, this is where her whole sacred gear awakens. It's
Yo, what are you even watching?
Oh, babe, hey, it's an analysis.
Nah, don't even. You over here drooling over big-eyed cartoon chicks. Go be with one of your
Okay, now, before you brand this man as an anime gooner, please consider one of the great burdens for any thinker or artist is the realm of erotic, lewd, or vulgar things. They're profound in their own right, but jarring to the uninitiated. They are taboo and often make you look like a menace. Okay, but everyone has these thoughts. So are they just horny or holy? Should you express or suppress? Enter the Muse. There's a reason for salaciousness, and I think any anime watcher knows this well and can afford some insight to all other kinds of thinkers, from the ridiculous large busts of characters like Tsunade in Naruto and Rangiku or Halle Bell in Bleach, to downright degenerate expressions of lusts like Ceres, Victorious, and Hellsing, and all sorts of other crazy things in that show, Slan in Berserk, and the many waifus of the notorious High School DxD harem. One might wonder why creators should be so inappropriate. Are they immature, profane, unable to contain their libido, or is there something sacred, fundamental, and deeply meaningful behind it all? In today's episode of Anime in the Inner World, we're diving headfirst into shame, vulgarity, and femininity, and where these supposedly primal aspects find purification in an eternal creative cycle through the Muse. As always, anime will be our proving ground, and viewer discretion is advised for this one, as this video contains some illicit imagery, as you could imagine. Muse, muse, muse. What is a muse? 3 definitions. 1, in Greek and Roman mythology, each of 9 goddesses, the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, who preside over the arts and sciences. 2, a person or personified force who is the source of inspiration for a creative artist. And 3, to be absorbed in thought. Put simply, the muse is a cycle of creation and inspiration, expression and absorption in a cycle around the feminine. There's a great example of all this in Berserk, a classic notorious manga, one of the great masterpieces. Berserk follows Guts, a battle-scarred mercenary haunted by a brutal childhood and endless war. Casca is his comrade, eventual lover, and proud commander of the Band of Hawk, a fearless group of mercenaries led by a handsome visionary, Griffith. Now, there's one scene where a group of assailants push Casca off of a cliff during a battle. She plunges into a river gorge, and Guts has to rescue her. Now, when he finds her, she's drenched, extremely cold, and suffering from a fever. To help her, he disrobes her, coddles her body, and readies his weapon for protection. Now, is Guts a pervert? No. Does it look bad if you walk in on it? Yeah, if you jump to conclusions. Guts undresses Casca in this moment with a pure heart. His intention is to keep her safe. And in doing so, Guts exercises temperance and restraint and does not ogle her naked body. For their muse, a hero turns their strength into duty. The muse is the inspiration and catalyst. Notice the cyclic nature here, the transformative effect, strength into duty, perversion into reverence, a rhythm. But how does a villain treat their muse? Griffith, that visionary we talked about, only sees Casca and the Band of Hawk as a means to an end, instruments to create a new world order. In a last-ditch effort to manifest his vision, he sacrifices Casca and the Band of Hawk to a legion of demons called the God Hand. And here he doesn't protect Casca, he consumes and defiles her. Much like the eclipse itself, the light of inspiration turns dark. There's a similar abuse of the muse in Naruto Shippuden with Sasuke and Karin. Naruto Shippuden is a continuation of the original Naruto series where the main protagonist Naruto wants to rehabilitate his main rival Sasuke, who has defected against their village because of a perceived injustice. Genocide of his whole family, the Uchiha clan. Fair enough. He has a team of loyal sympathizers one of which is a muse, Corinne. She is obsessed with him, but again, like Griffith, he uses her obsession for his own agenda. He absorbs her adoration without any reciprocity, leading her on a path of terrorism and destruction. The difference for Sasuke is that he eventually finds the light and does right by his future wife and muse, Sakura, who's a just woman. So his is a story of redemption. In both cases, Griffith and Sasuke, they use the muse selfishly, expressing their feminine inspiration as chaos. Again, we see the cycle. Absorb influence of the muse, expression of a response. In the case of Guts, his response is to protect. For Griffith and Sasuke, it's to destroy. But it isn't only the hero or the villain that express themselves. The muse themselves express their beauty and inspiration. Likewise, there is a righteous and a selfish way to do that. Let's take a closer look at expression of the muse. And we'll start with the wrong way to express, with Asuka in Evangelion. Young and ambitious Asuka immigrates to Tokyo to pilot Eva 2, a giant cyborg designed to defend Japan from city-destroying monsters called angels. She has a bright orange aesthetic, a flamboyant personality, and wounded psychology. She now seeks attention her family never gave her and pilots the Eva for the glory. But a savior cannot be selfish, and an Eva is not a toy. Filled with an inflated ego and wounded pride, she tragically dies fighting an angel, yet what truly killed her were her own demons. Another example of a muse's distorted expression is back in Berserk with Slan. One of the 5 members of the God Hand, the demons to whom Griffith made his earlier sacrifice, Slan is a literal succubus, an ancient demon that sucks the sexual essence out of men. Her design is erotic and predatory. In one scene, she ensnares Guts with tentacles and tries to tempt him. Under the stress of desire, Guts stays focused and pushes through, escaping her trap. He chooses not to absorb her lewd expression. This is really noteworthy because it shows that the subject displays the will to deny a muse's influence. And right here we transition from expression to absorption. In the case of Guts, he denies an overtly evil muse. But a hero may also deny a muse that means well out of respect for himself, his mission, and the muse themselves. They can choose what to absorb. A good example of this is Gon in Hunter x Hunter. One of my favorite manga anime. It's so charming. It's so beautiful, this story. Hunter x Hunter follows Gon Freaks, a young boy who sets out to find his long-lost father, a legendary hunter, which is an elite adventurer capable of facing the world's most dangerous threats. To do so, Gon must become a world-class hunter himself, face the world's greatest evils, and wrestle to maintain his innocence as he comes of age. Along the way, a young admirer named Palm falls for him. She's wildly unkempt at first, but tidies herself up to get Gon's attention. And one night, as they sit together near a lake, she asks to be Gon's girlfriend. And he declines, but with respect, prioritizing his mission and still leaving a positive impact on Palm. He also chooses, in this circumstance, not to absorb the muse's influence, but it isn't this decision. And it's this decision that makes Gon who he is. A man with integrity, a mission, someone who's trustworthy. This is why Palm likes him in the first place. In this case, the act of not absorbing the muse is actually honoring and enriching the muse, thus making the hero the muse. Because Palm is now the one who draws positive inspiration from Gon and uses it to make herself better. And the cycle continues. Gon is driven by justice, fueled by the muse. Even though it's his father he pursues, he inherently defends the women and children of the world. But in doing so, he becomes such an impressive figure that others are now inspired by him, making him a muse. So you might ask now, oh, Gon is a muse? How could he be a muse if he's male? I thought this was about femininity. Well, let's remember and refine the term. Perhaps muse isn't explicitly about women, but beauty and radiance, a feminine quality even when a male embodies it. So let me ask you this. Why does true power, whether in heroes or villains, so often borrow from the beauty and mystery of the feminine? Have you noticed this pattern, especially in anime and manga, where those at their peak often take on a refined, almost androgynous quality? Exhibit A, Dragon Ball Z. Oh, what are you talking about? I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Peep game. You know Dragon Ball Z. It follows the story of Goku, a pure-hearted guardian of Earth from the Saiyan race who wrestles with the forces of evil. One thing that's iconic about Dragon Ball Z is how characters can transform. Some are more primitive than others. In Goku's case, the first of his transformations is a giant ape that he becomes on a full moon, gaining tremendous power but losing self-control. Early in the series, he removes his tail, which would trigger the transformation. He opts to push his limits in a more controllable manner. The first time he does so is after one villain, Frieza, murders his best friend Krillin. And the rage that Goku feels out of his sense of duty to his loved ones grants him access to a higher state, the Super Saiyan. Now just look at the Super Saiyan design. The Saiyan's hair becomes luminous and golden, their eyes bright and ethereal, and they can push even further levels of Super Saiyan still. In Super Saiyan 3, his hair grows dramatically longer, signaling unleashed power paired with a kind of elegance. In Dragon Ball GT, Super Saiyan 4 leans into deliberate androgyny. Sleek black hair, red fur. He's got fur, bold markings around the eyes that read like makeup. Here, power coincides with attractive adornment. Oh, you're not convinced yet? Look at fusion. Goku and his closest ally Vegeta can literally fuse together and become the most powerful entity in the universe, Vegito, using these fabulous earrings called Patora earrings. Now, as Vegito, they wear this stylish jumpsuit. They got white gloves that are almost elbow length, kind of like a 1920s madam at a jazz bar. It's so fresh, and in essence, that represents the union of opposites. Pure heart, innocence, Goku, with the darker edge of his partner and rival Vegeta, together in perfect union. A merging of opposites that creates stylish perfection. Let's look at Frieza's evolution, the first major antagonist of the Dragon Ball Z series. He can also transform, and like Saiyans, his early forms are bulky and grotesque. The final form, however, is smooth, minimal, and eerily beautiful with this serpent-like sleekness. It's also important to mention that if you didn't tell the audience, it wouldn't be obvious whether Frieza is male or female. You think I'm done? Power with embellishment isn't unique to Dragon Ball. In Naruto, it emerges again, this time with even more serpentine flair. Naruto's perfected Nine Tails form glows with radiant eye markings, again like a kind of makeup, again power adorned with beauty, feminine beauty. Sasuke has a special form he can access because of a curse mark he wears. It darkens the lips, lengthens the hair, his nails turn black. This is one of the freshest, drippiest designs I've ever seen. He's so fresh, but clearly having integrated a feminine influence. Orochimaru, one of the notorious villains of the Naruto series, stands as overtly androgynous at some points. He is also serpentine, quite literally. And again, if no one told you, you wouldn't be sure if Orochimaru were male or female at some points. Here, androgyny recurs. And we'll explore the symbolism of androgyny in a future video, but so does the serpent reappear. Sasuke can also command a giant basilisk as one of his familiars. You know, like the one in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The serpent isn't just a creation of seduction. It's a universal archetype. Sleek, ambiguous, coiled with potential. It whispers secrets to both Adam and Eve, the man and the woman. It exists at the crossroads of power and temptation. In the Kundalini tradition, the serpent isn't evil, it's divine. It coils at the base of the spine, right near the genitals, and rises through the 7 chakras as a person matures spiritually. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a direct analogy or framework for how sexual energy, when harnessed with intention, becomes spiritual power. The body literally becomes like an altar. It's also the symbol used in modern medicine. The caduceus, it's a kundalini snake. Yes, the wand with 2 snakes. What they don't teach you is that it's an esoteric diagram of ascended erotic force. And it shows up in anime all the time. Nevertheless, in all the examples I just now mentioned, the highest forms of heroes and villains alike require a touch of feminine beauty, usually coinciding with refinement, enhanced power, and increased self-control. But nowhere is that more blatantly represented than in the Kill la Kill series. Oh my god, we're cooking right now. Hold up. Kill la Kill follows Ryoko Matoi, a rebellious teenager searching for her father's killer in a world where clothing grants supernatural powers. She and her rival Satsuki Kirin inherit sentient, ultra-revealing school uniforms that make them far more powerful than everyone else. But there's one caveat. These particular uniforms are quite erotic. Okay, as the story progresses, Senketsu, Ryoko's uniform, informs her that her access to his power directly depends on her pride in the uniform. In other words, less shame, more power. It's a really strong metaphor. As opposed to Slan, who exposes her intimate areas to tempt and distract, Ryoko does so as an act of pride and vulnerability and towards a righteous end. It's a spin on the idea that, with great power comes great responsibility. For the Muse, with great beauty comes great responsibility. Kill la Kill describes the Muse cycle particularly well because Ryoko is the Muse and the hero simultaneously right from the start. She is the Muse to Senketsu, who grants power to her shameless beauty. She is also the hero that uses the power to fight evil. The main villain is also a Slan-like perverted woman who intends to monopolize all clothing itself, and therefore beauty, expression, and sexuality, one of the Muse's main avenues. Ryoko and Satsuki fight on the side of liberation. It grants a whole new meaning to free the nip. It's not about reckless exposure, although it can be, but for the hero, relinquishment of shame and personal liberation. In all these examples, heroes and villains alike reveal a deeper truth. True power is refined, radiant, and whole. It isn't rooted in domination, but in the integration of the feminine with masculine force. Kill la Kill doesn't just flirt with this idea. It demonstrates how shame itself becomes the barrier to power. Like if there were a dam blocking Goku's Kamehameha. And we see this elsewhere too. Throughout anime and manga, shame often distorts, suppresses, or limits the hero's potential. And this can make for some awkward expressions. Look at Kakashi, another character from Naruto. He's a mentor to Naruto, Sakura, and even more so Sasuke. Now, no one really knows Kakashi. He's a quiet, solitary guy. And sometimes you'll see him, reading these like erotic romance novels. And it seems as if he prefers this lifestyle. Now, Kakashi is the archetype of the detached genius. He's beloved, respected, but emotionally unavailable. The erotic lives in him, but never moves through him. So even though Kakashi wouldn't have any issue finding meaningful intimacy, given who he is, he's Kakashi, he opts for a kind of voyeurism and observes intimacy as a fantasy. The result is that you sometimes see him leaned up against a wall, face covered, his single eye like scanning mischievously across an odd-looking booklet. He looks weird, bro. It's not a good look. But we've all seen something like this. That might have been you at some points, or maybe right now. Hidden away, watching something weird. Lord knows I have, but that's okay. The goal is to learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others. Mind you, Kakashi still becomes Hokage eventually, the leader of his whole people. But what kind of man might he have become if he ever mastered that eros inside of him earlier? Let's look at Jiraiya. Kakashi isn't the only teacher with voyeuristic tendencies. Jiraiya is Naruto's main mentor and adopted father figure. They share a charming lightheartedness and unspoken perversion. Jiraiya is notorious for peeping on women in bathhouses. And you may already be familiar with Naruto's salacious, sexy jutsu, a result of Jiraiya's influence. Now, Naruto eventually figures himself out and properly integrates sexuality. Hinata is his lover and muse. However, like Kakashi, Jiraiya carries this erotic energy and never fully integrates it, and it often erupts as immature perversion. But there's a deeper connection. He's the one writing the novels that Kakashi reads. They're the two sides of the same perverted coin, bonded by desire, yet both unable to embody it fully. The difference is, Jiraiya doesn't become Hokage, and he dies protecting the village. In this way, he represents the tragedy in the same archetype, the flawed mentor. The only redemption is Naruto himself, who is Jiraiya's spiritual successor and redemption. He claims his inner demon and expresses it effectively through love and duty to his people. He even writes his own novel later on. But the greatest example of awkward expression is found in the most notorious ecchi anime I've ever seen. And, it's the undisputed king of, I watch it for the plot, bro. High School DxD. This is the hyper personification of the Muse. It follows Issei, a perverted high schooler who dreams of having his own harem. His life changes when he's killed on his first date, who turns out to be a fallen angel. He's then resurrected by Rias Gremory, a high-ranking demon who makes him her servant and introduces him to a world of devils, angels, and spiritual warfare. At first, Issei is awkward, ashamed, and totally ruled by his desires. His role as a servant is a metaphor. He's literally a slave to his own lust. But as the story progresses, something wild happens. The more he embraces his connection to the muses around him, the stronger he becomes. Their beauty is not a distraction, it's his source of power. Eventually, he evolves from a simpering goon into their leader, commanding not just their attention, but the forces of heaven and hell alike, literally. He takes demons and directs them towards righteous aims. So if that isn't an analogy for channeling sexual energy, I don't know what is, man. And the spiritual theme isn't by accident. In this way, Issei becomes the male parallel to Ryoko from earlier. Just as Ryoko grows more powerful, the more revealing her outfit becomes, Issei's strength scales with the size and loyalty of his harem. Erotica fuels both characters. Through their respective journeys, they transform lust into discipline, shame into pride, and use beauty and attraction for justice. They temper themselves not to overindulge, not by rejecting their sexuality, but by refining it. The perfect foil to both is Ragyo. She's Satsuki's mother, a rainbow-drenched tyrant who uses her beauty as a weapon and clothing as control. She doesn't inspire, she forces absorption. Her presence demands attention wherever she arrives. Her excellence is performative, not purifying like light should be. So like Slan or Asuka, her beauty is for domination. Whereas Ryoko is an exhibitionist. She reveals herself to liberate. Ragyo broadcasts to induce bondage. She and Slan embody the dominatrix or the Black Widow archetype. The exhibitionist uses exposure as an act of freedom. The widow as a tool of distortion. One inspires, the other enslaves. However, exposure as creative expression has an even more taboo underbelly. While nudity and suggestive clothing are a sensitive subject, they maintain a lightheartedness that provides levity. They're easy to joke about, you can be silly, right? But things can get much darker and far more difficult to redeem. The shadows conceal initiation into a whole other realm of potency. Enter the world of obscenity. The following subject matter is illicit, so viewers' discretion, once again, is advised. Obscene. Of the portrayal or description of sexual matters, offensive or disgusting by accepted standards of morality and decency. Earlier, we discussed the highest potential in heroes like Naruto and Goku, but there's no light without dark, and one cannot reach the top without knowing the abyss. In this pursuit, our bodies are our vessel and temple, an object of pride, but also shame. Even more so when the temple is violated or desecrated. Acts of abuse create trauma that one may never discuss, let alone heal. Yet we regard those that do as the strongest among us. Take Goku. He's a bastard, abandoned and marked for death by his own people. Naruto bears a similar genesis. The Hidden Leaf Village assassinates Sasuke's whole bloodline, and they employ his own brother, Itachi, to do it. All three characters eventually resolve that chip on their shoulders, forgive, and lead the same people who had forsaken them. Who knows what other taboo phenomenon Naruto or Dragon Ball might discuss if they didn't target a mainstream audience. The crass and riveting manga Hellsing provides more thorough insight. Hellsing, gotta be top 5 favorites for me. The story follows Alucard, England's Nosferatu superweapon, and Ceres Victoria, a young police officer turned vampire, as they fight the undead, demons, and a Nazi vampire militia called Millennium. Both Alucard and Ceres experienced traumatic abuse as part of their origin. A demented guardian sodomizes Alucard as a youth, and a mob of ghouls grope and mutilate Ceres shortly before Alucard revives her as his vampire sidekick. Their dark pasts prepare them for foes straight from hell. If you think there's any measure that a Nazi vampire won't take, you're living in some candy world. Straight from hell. They are straight from hell. You should check out the story. It gets real dark. Only those who can look the devil in the eye and survive are qualified heroes against this kind of evil. Alucard's handler and muse is Integra Helsing, the leader of the Helsing organization, which handles supernatural threats across England. Remember, Alucard is an entity of pure darkness, a Nosferatu. It's his pact with Integra that guides his actions towards justice and protection. The muse, once again, in this situation, inspires temperance, but in Helsing, a contract of absolute servitude is necessary. Alucard is too much of a risk otherwise. With great power comes great responsibility. With great darkness comes even greater need for service. The same goes for Ceres. Alucard is her master and muse. She lives for and takes inspiration from him. It's the same cycle we keep seeing throughout this video. Muse inspires hero, who becomes muse, who inspires again. And the initiation through darkness is an age-old trope going as far back as biblical times. Take the story of Jesus, where he spends 40 days confronting and being tempted by Satan. Even the West's ideal archetype, Jesus, requires initiation through the abyss. And there's an important distinction here. It's not that Jesus is free or incapable of sin or corruption, or he couldn't be tempted. It's implied in the word tempting. It wouldn't be tempting if it weren't possible. So even he has to align himself wholeheartedly with righteousness in order to maintain that Jesus purity. And so there's new meaning in Alucard and Ceres being vampires themselves. Although they fight for good, they are equally corrupted. Their traumatic backgrounds serve as initiation into the realm where their service lies. What's more, they require even heavier allegiance to justice, which in the Helsing series manifests as outright bondage to a higher power. Eroticized violence displays the dark side of sexuality that is easy to ignore, but is all the more real. It's not something we can sweep under the rug. It alludes to the darkest valley that every hero must traverse with faith and allegiance to the highest good. But every pilgrimage through hell doesn't result in positive transformation. Some never leave the deep, dark valley. Let's return to Berserk, a series just as gnarly as Helsing, if not more so at times. Also, top five. Guts, like Alucard, is abused as a child and uses his experience to confront even darker evils. Griffith, on the other hand, after Guts, his most valuable warrior, a man worth 1,000 soldiers, quite literally, departs from the band of Hawk. Griffith spirals and decides to deflower the king's virgin princess, a terrible offense. And so we see the same trope yet again of sexually obscene acts prompting initiation. Once in Guts' origin, now as Griffith makes a really bad decision. And as punishment for this offense, the king has Griffith tortured so terribly that any rational person would rather have simply been beheaded. But it's at this low point that Griffith makes his pact with the God Hand and sacrifices the band of Hawk. The scene where this all occurs is called the Eclipse. The characters plunge into a realm of demonic terror, a kind of abyss where Guts fights tooth and nail to survive and save who he can. He loses his arm, and he watches Griffith defile Casca, the woman who Guts loves, out of sheer spite. So more obscenity. Guts and Casca both survive the eclipse. However, Guts is scarred, but even stronger and more resilient after. Casca, on the other hand, has literally lost her mind. So much happens in this series of events. we see all three different results of the same obscene initiation: damnation, transcendence, and collapse. Griffith becomes a Luciferian demon named Femto. Guts breaks through a superhuman ceiling of mental and physical resilience. And Casca just breaks. She loses her mind. She eventually recovers some semblance of sanity later on, but only because of Guts and his continued guidance and protection. It's also important to note that, again, like Allegory, like the literal Christ figure that Guts is, he only prevails through such evils because his allegiance to protection and service is so incredibly high and unwavering. In this way, he is also bound to a higher power, as it pertains to the Muse and the creative and sexual energy that surrounds. The obscene is the darkest and most potent iteration where transformation is a non-negotiable. However, the abyss is not for the faint of heart and can corrupt or mentally annihilate those who are not prepared. Tread carefully, as every great hero must confront it, testing their alignment with the highest good. So when your time comes, which path are you going to choose? Damnation, collapse, or transcendence? And now, we've just about seen the full spectrum of creative inspiration and influence surrounding the Muse and their beauty. What it all means for the hero, villain, or Muse themselves. And I'm sure as we've reviewed some of these characters and their stories, you've seen yourself or people you know in them. Let me know in the comments which characters you resonate with most. Which ones did you see and you're like, I know that guy. But how does it all manifest in the real world, inside of you? Well, how do you get out of bed in the morning and push through the midday malaise and find the will to work out and not just become a, big fat person? The Muse. Traditionally, the man becomes strong to support his wife and children. He becomes a Muse himself and attracts a wife. The woman retains her beauty so she can inspire a worthy hero to pursue her. Things aren't so cut and dry and simple these days, but I'll get more into it. I'll get more into that part in a second. Generally speaking, the creative cycle is the vitality that keeps you moving. In terms of neurochemistry, having goals, a reason for being, aligns our serotonin and dopamine rewards with productive aims. Without it, we are lost, we fall into depression, degeneracy. A person with nothing to lose and nothing to fight for is dangerous, and idle time is the devil's playground. You're going to find something to do one way or another, and it isn't always going to be a good thing. That's why we have extracurriculars for children after school. Without it, they become, free agents, scallywags, egging people's houses, stealing, doing God knows what else. It's raw virility with no direction. But the ultimate source of motivation, as we see in the case of the greatest heroes we've mentioned, is alignment with a higher purpose, with something greater than ourselves. Goku fights for the planet. Guts is strongest when he has someone to protect. Naruto fights for his village. Ryoko uses her beauty to liberate her people. This isn't just a theory. If you want to walk the path of the hero, you gotta take some steps. You gotta make it real. So I designed a simple framework to kind of reorient oneself. It's called reflect, refine, expand, revisit. Reflect, refine, expand, revisit. Reflect. Who do you love? What impact do you want to leave? Write it down. Then refine it into a short vision statement. And then you can expand on that vision statement. Flesh it out with as much specificity as possible. What do you want for this month, this year, this decade, this lifetime? What do you look like at the end of these goals? You can also add a tier system to help keep things grounded. What would these goals look like in their easiest, most attainable version? And then what would it look like if you had zero limitations? That way, you won't have a goal that you can't actually reach, but once you do, you won't put a cap on your own potential, and there's more reason to keep pushing. So, like Guts or Goku, they train realistically, but the sky's the limit when their back's against the wall. And finally, revisit. So, revisiting the vision statement and the motivation on a regular basis. The short vision statement is easy to revisit, and having written the longer version with specificity will still register when you see it. You can always revisit that longer one later if you forget. I put mine literally right next to my front door, so it's subliminally, I see it all the time, every day. Shame. The lowest emotional state, often leading to depression or awkward expression. In Evangelion, there's a scene where the main protagonist, Shinji, is at Asuka's bedside after she gets beaten up real bad. And it's really weird because he decides to like pleasure himself like while she's unconscious. And it's one of those really just strange scenes. But it's not, once again, it's not there just for the sake of shock value. It sends a message. It's a real thing. Those who repress their desire often act out in desperation. This may take the form of affairs, voyeurism, as we've seen multiple times throughout this video, crime, each act deepening and reinforcing the shame. It's a highway to hell. And it's on the other side of idle time, where we end up without properly integrating our muse as motivation. You end up as Shinji, a goon of tremendous proportions. It's impossible to reject part of yourself, especially sexual and creative energy. If it's denied, it manifests destructively or turns inward as self-harm. It's part of you. To destroy it, you would have to destroy part of yourself. Common examples, smut addiction, people cutting themselves, other forms of masochistic behavior, self-castration, self-termination. It's dark stuff. What's more is a community suffers when its individuals do. So those trapped in shame can't serve others fully and may project their pain outward in harmful ways. Hidden desire breeds self-destruction and resentment, corroding both the self and the surrounding society. The Muse's cycle of expression and absorption connects people. When the cycle distorts, relationships distort. The strained dynamic that we see between men and women in the West today reflects that very imbalance. Women resent the men for abusing the muse, which would be them. Men resent the women for weaponizing their beauty. The family, the foundation of the whole community, then falls apart, and you have anarchy. Domestic terrorism echoes the same pathology. So you have neglected young boys, they're lacking guidance, they turn their anger outward. We all know what I'm talking about when I say that. There's actually a scene in Evangelion where Shinji, because he's upset with his father who had neglected him, just kind of uses him as a means to an end, decides to get in the Eva and attack the city. He becomes a terrorist. Without integration of his creative energy, the creation then becomes destruction. Humans are social creators. The self-actualized individual channels eros, or their creative sexual energy, consciously, balancing it within and among other people. So when the muse's current is blocked, the pain grows. Integration heals. Suppression corrodes. The muse's cycle of creation must flow, or the distortion will manifest somehow, some way. There's no getting around it, either hurting oneself or the people around them. In any case, the world is worse off because of it. The muse and the creative cycle are not something anyone can escape ever. Here's another framework to help identify a shame and get on track to liberation. I call it the NOVA framework for shame liberation. So the N stands for name the shame. For example, I'll use a common example. What's the shame? Wearing more revealing clothing. Somebody's ashamed of wearing revealing clothing. Okay. O, own your reason for caring. Oh, people will think you're a whore, or they'll think you're gay or something. V, verify the consequences. Are they real or imagined? Okay, so in this circumstance, what are the consequences? I'm going to get kicked out of my church, or people will profile me. A, act with real world steps. Okay, so if you're going to get kicked out of the church, you got to ask yourself, do you need to stay in that community? Is it actually supporting your growth? Is the belief they're criticizing you with even rooted in any truth? Or is it just an inherited shame, indoctrination? If you're worried about people profiling you, are you truly dishonoring yourself? Is your reason for expressing yourself in this way with clothing valid? Is it beautiful and misunderstood, or do you have a dark intention? Nova, name the shame, own the reason for caring, verify the consequences, act with real world steps. So the last step, which is the A, is the step that reveals a fundamental problem that you could now work to resolve. Okay, this community is not serving me and is just ridiculing me without any good reason. Or I think I do have a chip on my shoulder and I want to, wear these clothes as an act of rebellion. In this case, this is when we reach out to our support network, our people we trust, mentors, professionals, in the worst cases. And sometimes we find that the shame that we feel is from something deeply disturbing and traumatic from our pasts. Abuse and violation. It's hard to discuss these things to ourselves, let alone in public, but it doesn't make it go away. And as we discussed before, if you're able to resolve a deep-seated trauma, it can be the most powerful source of personal development and liberation. If you find something of this nature in your past, it's important first to admit it to yourself, and then find someone you can trust. It may not even be a family member or friend. You can reach out to a health professional. There's no shortage of options. Therapists, psychiatrists, holistic focused health professionals like doctors of naturopathy. I also want to say clearly, I don't have all the answers, and this is not medical advice. I'm still figuring things out. But I believe the NOVA framework is better than nothing. However, it relies on your own honesty, and always, it's never going to hurt to go talk to somebody or see a professional. The alternative, possibly, is that these traumas are going to fester and they can again turn into harm for yourself or other people. There's a book called The Body Keeps a Score. It suggests that there's a pathological connection even between trauma and our physical well-being, manifesting as disease states. What's more, we've all heard this before, the abused becomes the abuser. Bloodlines, societies, and families can pass down the same abuse that they experience onto future generations and society at large. Healing a pain in ourselves then becomes all the more important as it stops a cycle. It's part of a severe truth. The creative cycle around the muse operates on two poles: ultimate expression, enlightenment, and liberation, but also the most degenerate forms of destruction and evil. Where do you stand in the creative cycle of the muse? The creators are themselves caught in the muse cycle. So the anime is their expression, born of inspiration. The characters, the arcs, the aesthetics, they stem from the artist's encounter with the feminine, the erotic, their muses. Then it loops again. The audience watches, receives that inspiration, absorb it, and perhaps they create something in turn, just like this video. An extension of the same cycle. I want to become someone for my family, for the people I care about, and help my community. So I make this. I love you, so this is for you. And maybe some of the love will come back to me. A man can only hope. If I were to do this for glory or for money or power or something, I'd be no better than Griffith or Asuka or Slan. So I hope this creation finds you well. The cycle connects us all. Are you inspired? What will you now create? Who's your muse? At the very least, I hope your fingers express a click on the like and subscribe buttons. And ring that bell while you're at it so you can get notification of upcoming videos. God bless. I'll see you in the next one.